Hello, everybody. Oh, I just realised my hair's all stuck up. Sorry about that. There you go. That looks a little bit more familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, it's been rather warm here, so I had my hair piled up on top of my head because otherwise it gets too warm. Anyway, how are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're safe. I hope that you are able to enjoy something at the moment. Yummy food, a nice place to be, or a safe place to be, or something to read, or whatever it is that does it for you. It doesn't actually really matter, and you don't need to tell me what it is. Just enjoy it. Hi, CJ. Hi, CJ. Great to have you here. Hang on, sorry, I'm just unlocking my iPad mini. I use a first generation iPad mini to read from when I don't have a physical book that I can read from, just because it still works. And there's nothing wrong with using old tech if it works for what you're doing. Just so you know, there's probably some restrictions in place if you're a reasonably new follower. I know, I'm pretty sure CJ's been following me since Saturday morning, my time, whatever it is, their time. But yes, if you're new here, you'll probably have to wait a bit before you can actually do chat normally. And what was I going to say? Yeah, normally if I can, I'll read from a physical book like this, old-fashioned books with pages, and they smell like old paper. Otherwise, I read from my iPad mini, and it's, as I said, it's the first generation one, so it doesn't update anymore. You can't put new apps on it. You can't, yeah, they don't work. I've tried. But the inbuilt apps, that's Safari for the browser and iBook, I think it's called iReader, iBook, something like that, they still work. So that means that I can download ebooks from Project Gutenberg and read those to you. And the reason I download them from there is because the ones at Project Gutenberg are all public domain books, which means that I'm not interfering with anybody else's copyright. I'm not causing problems for them, but I'm actually helping people to experience books that they may never have heard of, or they may have wonderful memories of from when they were young, or heard them at some stage, or maybe even actually saw as a TV program or a movie, often when they're a kid. We've had all sorts of stories, things like The Wind in the Willows and what's it called? The Secret Garden, and also A Little Princess, both by the same author as each other. Frances Hodgson Burnett, there you go. And they are famous English ones that have had various movies and TV series made of them over the years. All that sort of stuff. And it's been great, lots of fun. What else? Yeah, if you're new here, this is what I do. I chat at the beginning, I chat at the end, and then I chat in between chapters. If the chapters are short enough to have a chapter break while I'm reading, I usually read for between an hour and a half. And I'm Jev. I live in NZ, also known as New Zealand. So it's summer here at the moment. Actually, no, it's just started to be autumn, but it's still fairly warm. If you have captions showing on your screen and you don't like captions, if you hover this is assuming that you're doing it on a desktop computer, either a Mac or a PC. I don't know about consoles and I don't know about mobile, but there should be an option to tap on the screen, see that there should be a purple box that has the letters CC in for closed captions, and you can either edit what the settings are for the captions or turn them off if you don't like them. I do have friends who like to have them just because they don't have hearing loss, but sometimes with processing words, it helps to hear them and to see them. It's just one of the odd ways that our brains work. And I've noticed that when I and my family watch movies, if we have the option, we will put subtitles on. Subtitles, closed captions, same sort of thing. And it actually makes it a lot easier to follow what's going on in the story. Just works that way. And got to the point where we've actually almost don't even notice that we're reading subtitles when we are. One of the movies we watched a few years ago was a chef one, and it's a German language one, and it was done in German language completely. Like, we didn't put it into English or anything like that, and we don't speak German. And so we're just reading the subtitles for it. Now, our daughter, who wasn't with us at the time, she was somewhere else. She saw it before we did. And she said, because it's actually a remake of another one. No, she saw the American one, the American remake of this German one. And she said it's like they had taken the script and literally word for word had done it again as an American production. And I laughed about it because she was saying that the script that was used was literally the same thing. In actual fact, what she was going by was the picture of it in her head of what they were saying, because the whole thing was read subtitles because we had to watch the original in German. It's just the way your brain works. If you do it often enough, it actually gets so it's quite an easy thing to follow. And yes, if you've got it's a humorous movie and someone laughs really, really loud, often you can miss those little extra jokes that follow on from a main joke, which add to the humor of it. But if you've got the subtitles, you still get them if it's well subtitled. So anyway, we don't have those sort of things going on here because I'm reading a book. But if it helps you with understanding, great. And if it doesn't, you can turn them off. That's all good. Just before I start reading, I do have a tip for you. Make sure you have something to drink. I have water because it's great to stay hydrated. Something to snack on, which I don't have any today, but I don't need anything. I've actually also got a second drink. It is my homemade iced coffee, which is just coffee from the machine and then topped up with cold milk. Something to drink, something to snack on, and somewhere comfortable to sit, unless of course you're studying or working or something like that, and that's all good with me. I don't need you I don't need to be validated by knowing that you're going to chat with me while I'm in the middle of my reading. That I'm fine with you being busy, not being fully focused on what I'm doing. If it makes what you're doing an easier thing to do, that's all good. I've got friends who will study or do work where it's something that they're dealing with numbers or doing a project that requires a lot of hands-on things where they need something that's going to keep the rest of their brain occupied, and so they'll listen to me reading them story while they're doing either the study or the other work that they're doing. And I'm not the focus of what they're doing. The focus of what they're doing is the study or the work, but it helps to actually make the time pass a lot quicker for them, and I'm happy to be that for them. Just as an extra little bit of information, if you want to catch up on other stories we've done, or if you haven't had the first half of a story and we're partway through it, I do put the videos over onto YouTube. I don't do it immediately. I put them over 2 weeks after I've actually broadcast on Twitch. So if you're patient and you've caught a live here on Twitch and want the rest of the story that you missed before, if you're patient, you can see the rest of it in 2 weeks' time, or less than that, because some of it's already been read. And I transfer them over and put them into playlists, and I have the same release. My release cycle is basically the same as when I'm live on Twitch, except it's half an hour later. So in 20 minutes from now, in my time, I don't know how it works for your time zone, but 20 minutes from now in New Zealand, the video that I recorded, the Twitch stream I recorded 2 weeks ago, will go live over on YouTube. And I have links for that in my About section on Twitch. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube and you want to be part of what's going on when I'm actually reading live instead of actually just watching a recording, there's a link on my YouTube channel, so you can go back to my Twitch channel and possibly catch me reading live, chat, that sort of thing. If there's a bunch of you here and you're chatting with each other, that's great. I have no problem with that. Just keep it family friendly, because we do have people who are watching it with their children or their grandchildren. The focus of the type of stories is appropriate for families, so let's keep it family friendly. I'm happy for you guys to chat with each other, you folks to chat with each other, as long as you're happy for me to not engage with the chat until we're in a break or something like that. One of the extra things for those of you who are new here is that I do interrupt myself. I will sometimes get lost on the page. I will often explain things because as you can see from the colour of my hair, which is totally natural at the moment, I've had a lot of life experience. Yeah, so, and also I grew up next door to, I grew up with my parents, but next door to my grandparents. And they had lived a fairly old-fashioned lifestyle, and so there was a lot of things that went on in the area where we were living that were based on things from generations before. They were still referenced, and so I was very familiar with them. Not having electricity all the time, things like that. I grew up out in the country a bit, where the power lines are fairly exposed to bad weather, so it was quite common to get a power cut and to have a power cut for quite a while. So you learn to do things in alternate ways, like having lighting systems and cooking systems that don't rely entirely on electricity, all that sort of stuff, which actually adds to your understanding of the way people have lived in different times and places. And that's part of what I want to bring with reading these old-fashioned stories, is a broader mindset, a broader understanding of the world that we live in and the world where our world has come from. And it's also fun. So let's just get on with reading the story, and I can stop talking at you about it. And I may actually occasionally ask somebody, if anyone wants to look something up and type it in the chat. Those bits in the chat I will actually reference while I'm in the middle of reading if I spot them. So if I say, can somebody look up so-and-so and give us what that means, feel free to do it. Look it up in Google, type it into the chat. We're all good. Anyway, we'll carry on, shall we? Right. We are reading The Phœnix in the Carpet by E. Nesbit. It was published in 1904, I think, but I'm not sure. Somebody can look that up if they want to. And we are up to chapter 5, which is called The Temple. And it's a reasonably long chapter, so I'm probably only going to read the one today. I find it a little bit unfair to get halfway through a chapter and then stop reading and leave you in suspense, because when a writer writes a book and has it in chapters, they might put a cliffhanger ending at the end of a chapter, but that's intended. If you do it partway through a chapter yourself, it kind of spoils the flow of the story. So I try to stick to finishing on a chapter break. So if it's a book with lots of chapters, we'll read a whole lot of chapters and we will chat in between. If it's a book with long chapters, I'll probably just read one chapter like I'm doing with this book. This particular author seems to like having a reasonably consistent chapter length, and they're quite long. So we'll carry on. Chapter 5, The Temple. I wish we could find the Phœnix, said Jane. It's much better company than the carpet. The carpet, by the way, is this carpet that their mother got for them to replace one that they'd damaged with fireworks when they were testing them indoors. Rather dangerous, I think. Yes, 1904. Yay, wonderful. Yes, it's the second one in the trilogy. The very first book that's in the trilogy is called 5 Children and It. And if you go across to my YouTube channel, you don't have to do it now because you're listening to me, remember. But I actually have the recording of that over there as one of my playlists. So if you follow the link to my YouTube channel, go to the playlists tab and look down. Reasonably recently, like only probably in the last half dozen playlists, you should find my one called 5 Children and It. And then the last book in the trilogy is The Amulet, which we will have, but not immediately after we've finished this book, because we've found that if you have a couple of books in a row by the same author with the same characters in them, and if they're a little bit mischievous like these children seem to be, it can get a little bit same when you have 2 books worth or 3 books worth of stories about them, rather than refreshing your palette effectively and having some other book written by some other author as a break in between. But yes, wonderful, and thank you for looking that up, CJ. That's great. I do hope that's okay with you that I call you CJ. Anyway, doesn't matter at the moment, I mean, let me know if you want to be called something else, or I just won't say what to call you. Anyway, yeah, I'm digging myself a hole. I think I'll get on with reading, okay? I wish we could find the phœnix, said Jane. It's much better company than the carpet. Beastly ungrateful little kids are, said Cyril, because Jane's the youngest. No, I'm not, only the carpet never says anything and it's so helpless. It doesn't seem to be able to take care of itself. It gets sold and taken into the sea and things like that. That's references to other chapters previously. You wouldn't catch the phœnix getting sold. Just extra explanation. The phœnix's egg was in this carpet, which arrived rolled up from the place that Mother had bought it, and accidentally got dropped in the fire, the egg, and so therefore the phœnix hatched. Now the phœnix is sentient. The phœnix can talk with them and do things. I think it's a magical being, but we haven't seen it doing specific magic. But the carpet grants 3 wishes a day. Now the first book, the Samiad, which is the it of 5 children in it, also granted a wish per day, and the children learnt that you have to phrase your wishes very carefully, and it's actually, you say I wish with heartfelt intent a lot more often than you realise. They got into lots of difficult situations because of it. Anyway, we'll carry on. That's what the reference is to, is the fact that the phœnix seems to know what it's doing, whereas the carpet is just an inanimate object that grants wishes. I think it's some connection with the phœnix anyway. You wouldn't catch the phœnix getting sold. It was 2 days after the bazaar. Everyone was a little cross. Some days are like that. Usually Mondays, by the way. And this was a Monday. I shouldn't wonder if your precious phœnix has gone off for good, said Cyril, and I don't know that I blame it. Look at the weather. It's not worth looking at, said Robert, and indeed it wasn't. Robert's the second youngest, and very outgoing and outspoken and rather impulsive. The phœnix hasn't gone, I'm sure it hasn't, said Anthea. I'll have another look for it. Now, Anthea is the oldest of the 2 girls. She's the second oldest of the kids. Anthea looked under tables and chairs and in boxes and baskets, in Mother's work bag and Father's portmanteau. A work bag is like the thing that you put all your mending in, and your needles and threads and scissors and stuff. But still, the phœnix showed not so much as the tip of one shining feather. Then suddenly Robert remembered how the whole of the Greek invocation song of 7,000 lines had been condensed by him into one English hexameter, and so he stood on the carpet and chanted, "Oh, come along, you good old beautiful phœnix," because apparently that's how you summon it, using this Greek invocation song of 7,000 lines, or, as Robert had accidentally done, by saying, "Oh, come along, you good old beautiful phœnix," which apparently means the same thing. Anyway, and almost at once there was a rustle of wings down the kitchen stairs, and the phœnix sailed in on wide gold wings. "Where on earth have you been?" said Anthea. "I've looked everywhere for you." "Not everywhere," said the bird, "because you did not look in the place where I was. Confess that hallowed spot was overlooked by you." "What hallowed spot?" asked Cyril, the oldest boy, a little impatiently, for time was hastening on, and the wishing carpet was still idle. "The spot," said the phœnix, "which I hallowed by my golden presence was the lutron." "The what?" "The bath, the place of washing." "I'm sure you weren't," said Jane. "I looked there 3 times and moved all the towels." "I was concealed," said the phœnix, "on the summit of a metal column, enchanted I should judge, for it felt warm to my golden toes, as though the glorious sun of the desert shone ever upon it." "Oh, you mean the cylinder," said Cyril. "It has rather a comforting feel this weather. And now, where shall we go?" The cylinder being the hot water cylinder in their bathroom, because being written in 1904, indoor plumbing that was hidden away in cupboards and ceilings was not quite yet done. They hadn't got to that stage, so it was quite fancy to have a hot water cylinder in your house rather than having to boil water. It was something that people were starting to get into. And then, of course, the usual discussion broke out as to where they should go and what they should do. And naturally, everyone wanted to do something that the others did not care about. And they've only got 3 wishes. And one of those wishes is usually good as kept in reserve so they can get home again. Don't want to get stuck somewhere like in 15th century France, down on the south coast where it's way too far away to get home and in the wrong time period, just because you wished to be down there. We'll carry on, shall we, and find out what happens this time. I am the eldest, Cyril remarked. Let's go to the North Pole. This weather, likely, Robert rejoined. Let's go to the equator. I think the diamond mines of Golconda would be nice, said Anthea. Don't you agree, Jane? No, I don't, retorted Jane. I don't agree with you. I don't agree with anybody. The Phœnix raised a warning claw. If you cannot agree among yourselves, I fear I shall have to leave you, it said. Where shall we go? You decide, said all. If I were you, said the bird thoughtfully, I should give the carpet a rest. Besides, you'll lose the use of your legs if you go everywhere by carpet. Can't you take me out and explain your ugly city to me? So, because the Phœnix hasn't been hatched for a long time, and he comes from what he considers to be a much more elegant era. Several hundred years, I think, from what he said at the beginning. We will if it clears up, said Robert, without enthusiasm. Just look at the rain, and why should we give the carpet a rest? Are you greedy and grasping and heartless and selfish? Asked the bird sharply. No, said Robert with indignation. Well then, said the Phœnix, and as to the rain, well, I am not fond of rain myself. If the sun knew I was here, he's very fond of shining on me because I look so bright and golden. He always says I repay a little attention. Haven't you some form of words suitable for use in wet weather? There's rain, rain, go away, said Anthea, but it never does go. In other words, we don't have magic invocations. Perhaps you don't say the invocation properly, said the bird. Rain, rain, go away, come again another day. Little baby wants to play, said Anthea. That's quite wrong, and if you say it in that sort of dull way, I can quite understand the rain not taking any notice. You should open the window and shout as loud as you can, Rain, rain, go away, come again another day. Now we want the sun, and so, pretty rain, be kind and go. You should always speak politely to people when you want them to do things, and especially when it's going away that you want them to do. And today you might add, Shine, great sun, the lovely Phœnix is here and wants to be shone on splendid sun by thee. A bit of forced rhyming there. That's poetry, said Cyril decidedly. It's like it, said the more cautious Robert. I was obliged to put in lovely, said the Phœnix modestly, to make the line long enough for the number of syllables. There are plenty of nasty words just that length, said Jane, but everyone else said hush. And then they opened the window and shouted the 7 lines as loud as they could, and the Phœnix said all the words with them except lovely. And when they came to that, it looked down and coughed bashfully because of calling himself a lovely Phœnix. The rain hesitated a moment and then went away. That's true politeness, said the Phœnix, and the next moment it was perched on the window ledge, opening and shutting its radiant wings and flapping out its golden feathers in such a flood of glorious sunshine as you sometimes have at sunset in the autumn time. Those are the pictures I've been posting on Instagram just recently, some of our recent sunsets. Wonderful glowing skies, aren't they wonderful? Not my photos, but just when the sky's like that. Just it makes your heart all warm. People said afterwards that there had been no such sunshine in December for years and years and years. They're in London, and at this stage, it's pretty dull and grey and miserable for all of winter. England's lovely when you get out into the countryside. not all the time in winter, but it's nicer when you're in the countryside, and it's clearer when you're in the countryside. It's not as heavy and grey as what it is in the city. But yeah, that's why people said that there had not been such sunshine in December for years and years and years. "And now," said the bird, "we will go out into the city, and you shall take me to see one of my temples." "Your temples? I gather from the carpet that I have many temples in this land." "I don't see how you can find anything out from it," said Jane. "It never speaks." "All the same, you can pick up things from a carpet," said the bird. "I've seen you do it, and I have picked up several pieces of information in this way. That papyrus on which you showed me my picture, I understand it bears on it the name of the street of your city in which my finest temple stands, with my image graved in stone and in metal over against its portal." "You mean the fire insurance office," said Robert. "It's not really a temple, and they don't—" "Excuse me," said the Phoenix coldly. "You are wholly misinformed. It is a temple, and they do." "Don't let's waste the sunshine," said Anthea. "We might argue as we go along to save time." So the Phoenix consented to make itself a nest in the breast of Robert's Norfolk jacket, and they all went out into the splendid sunshine. The best way to the Temple of the Phoenix seemed to be to take the tram. And on the top of it the children talked, while the Phoenix now and then put out a wary beak, cocked a cautious eye, and contradicted what the children were saying. It was a delicious ride, and the children felt how lucky they were to have had the money to pay for it. Yes, they didn't often have money. They went with the tram as far as it went, and when it did not go any farther, they stopped too and got off. The tram stops at the end of the Gray's Inn Road, and it was Cyril who thought that one might well find a shortcut to the Phoenix office through the little streets and courts that lie tightly packed between Fetter Lane and Ludgate Circus. Those are real streets and areas of central London. You can look them up on the map. Of course, he was quite mistaken, Cyril, about being able to find their way through. Of course, he was quite mistaken, as Robert told him at the time, and afterwards Robert did not forbear to remind his brother how he had said so. The streets there were small and stuffy and ugly and crowded with printers' boys and binders' girls coming out from work, and these stared so hard at the pretty red coats and caps of the sisters that they wished they had gone some other way. And the printers and binders made very personal remarks, advising Jane to get her hair cut, and inquiring where Anthea had bought her hat. Jane and Anthea scorned to reply, and Cyril and Robert found that they were hardly a match for the rough crowd. They could think of nothing nasty enough to say as a retort. They turned a corner sharply, and then Anthea pulled Jane into an archway, and then inside a door. Cyril and Robert quickly followed, and the jeering crowd passed by without seeing them. That's a bit of quick thinking on Anthea's part. Anthea drew a long breath. "How awful," she said. "I didn't know there were such people except in books." "It was a bit thick, but it's partly you girls' fault coming out in those flashy coats." "We thought we ought to when we were going out with the Phoenix," said Jane, and the bird said, "Quite right, too," and incautiously put out his head to give her a wink of encouragement. And at that same instant a dirty hand reached through the grim balustrade of the staircase beside them, and clutched the Phoenix, and a hoarse voice said, "I say, Herb, blowed if this ain't our Poll Parrot what we lost. Thank you very much, Liddy, for bringing him home to roost." The four turned swiftly. Two large and ragged boys were crouched amid the dark shadows of the stairs. Here we go. Here's the first picture of this story. Although this is slightly early. Bash him off, Herb. The four turned swiftly. Two large and ragged boys were crouched amid the dark shadows of the stairs. They were much larger than Robert and Cyril, and one of them had snatched the phoenix away and was holding it high above their heads. "Give me that bird," said Cyril sternly. "It's ours." "Good afternoon, and thanking you," said the boy, with maddening mockery. "Sorry I can't give you tuppence for your trouble, but I've had to spend my fortune advertising for my valuable bird in all the newspapers. You can call for the reward next year." "Look out, Ike," said his friend a little anxiously. "It have a beak on it." "It's other parties as'll have the beak on him." "Presently," said Ike darkly, "if they come a trying to lay claims on my poll parrot. You just shut up, Oob. Now then, you four little girls, get out of this." The beak. The judge in the court. Nickname for. Yes. "Little girls," cried Robert. "Oh, little girl, you." He sprang up 3 stairs and hit out. There was a squawk, the most bird-like noise anyone had heard from the phoenix, and a fluttering, and a laugh in the darkness. And Ike said, "There now, you've gone and struck my poll parrot right in the feathers. Struck him something cruel, you have." Robert stamped with fury. Cyril felt himself growing pale with rage, and with the effort of screwing up his brain to make it clever enough to think of some way of being even with those boys. Anthea and Jane were as angry as the boys, but it made them want to cry. Yet it was Anthea who said, "Do please let us have the bird." "Do please get along and leave us and our bird alone." "If you don't," said Anthea, "I shall fetch the police." "You better," said he whose name was Herb. "Say, Ike, you twist the bloomin' pigeon's neck. He ain't worth tuppence." In other words, he's better dead, because then we've got meat. "Oh, no," cried Jane, "don't hurt it. Oh, don't. It is such a pet." "I won't hurt it," said Ike. "I'm shamed of you, Herb, for thinking of such a thing. 'Arf a shiner, miss." "And the bird is yours for life." In other words, if you pay me some money, you can have him back. "Half a what?" said Anthea. "'Arf a shiner. Quid. Thicken. 'Arf a sov, then." That's a sovereign. That's a lot of money, half a sovereign. "I haven't got it, and besides, it's our bird," said Anthea. "Oh, don't talk to him," said Cyril. And then Jane said suddenly, "Phœnix, dear Phœnix, we can't do anything. You must manage it." Someone's been listening to what the phoenix says about being polite. "With pleasure," said the phoenix. And Ike nearly dropped it in amazement. "I say, it do talk suther like," said he. "Youths," said the phoenix, "sons of misfortune, hear my words." "My eyes," said Ike. "Look out, Ike," said Herb. "You'll throttle the joker, and I see at once he was worth his weight in flimsies." "Ooh, hearken, O iconoclasts, despiser of sacred images, and thou, Urbanus, dweller in the sordid city, forbear this adventure lest a worse thing befall." That was the phoenix. "Love us," said Ike. "Ain't it been taught it's schoolin' just?" "Restore me to my young acolytes and escape unscathed. Retain me and—" "They must have got all this up 'cause the Polly got pinched," said Ike. "Lor' lummy, the artfulness of them young uns." I say, slosh him in the geest and get clear off with the swag, was what I say," urged Herbert. "Right-o," said Isaac. "Forbear," hard to switch between accents and get them reasonably the same each time. "Forbear," repeated the phoenix sternly. "Who pinched the click off of the old bloke in Aldermanbury?" it added in a changed tone. "Who sneaked the nose rag out of the young gals and in Bell Court? Who—" "Stow it," said Ike. "You, leave go of me. Bash him off, Herb. He'll have my bloomin' eyes out of my head." There were howls, a scuffle, a flutter. Ike and Herb fled up the stairs, and the phoenix swept out through the doorway. The children followed, and the phoenix settled on Robert. like a butterfly on a rose, said Anthea afterwards, and wriggled into the breast of his Norfolk jacket, like an eel into mud, as Cyril later said. Wiggled in underneath the coat. A Norfolk jacket is a particular style that the boys used to wear. This is the Edwardian period, I think. If you're wondering what the clothing was like, you can look it up. Why ever didn't you burn him? You could have, couldn't you? Asked Robert when the hurried flight through the narrow courts had ended in the safe wideness of Farringdon Street. I could have, of course, said the bird, but I didn't think it would be dignified to allow myself to get warm about a little thing like that. The fates, after all, have not been illiberal to me. I have a good many friends among the London sparrows, and I have a beak and claws. These happenings had somewhat shaken the adventurous temper of the children, and the phoenix had to exert its golden self to hearten them up. Presently the children came to a great house in Lombard Street, and there on each side of the door was the image of the phoenix carved in stone, and set forth on shining brass were the words, Phœnix Fire Office. And I'm just going to have a quick look to see if I actually have this picture to be able to show you in the next. I think I do. Here we go. There you go. Phœnix Fire Office. It's hidden behind the hanging sign of the phoenix. There you go. I'll just move it. There you go. Oh, you don't need a great house in Lombard Street. Sorry, I have to tilt my head slightly because of where the reading part on my glasses is. Oh, and that's actually a good way to see the sort of clothing the children were wearing, which is why they were being made fun of, because the young people who were working in the first part of the streets that they were going through didn't dress like this at all. And that's why there were comments like the girls needed to get their hair cut and that sort of thing, because the working class people dressed completely differently. They had their hair different because you needed to wear things that didn't cost you too much, that were robust. You didn't get your hair caught in machinery or anything like that. It didn't take too much looking after, so you didn't get lice in it, because you pick up lice very easily when you've got wispy bits of hair that touch onto other people who have lice, that sort of thing. Not something that I need to normally worry about, but people did have to who were working at that stage. Anyway, I'll carry on reading. Phœnix Fire Office. One moment, said the bird. Fire for altars, I suppose. I don't know, said Robert. He was beginning to feel shy, and that always made him rather cross. Oh, yes, you do, Cyril contradicted. When people's houses are burnt down, the phoenix gives them new houses. Father told me. I asked him. The house, then, like the phoenix, rises from its ashes? Well have my priests dealt with the sons of men, said the phoenix. The sons of men pay, you know, said Anthea, but it's only a little, every year. That is to maintain my priests, said the bird, who in the hour of affliction heal sorrows and rebuild houses. Lead on, inquire for the high priest. I will not break upon them too suddenly in all my glory. Noble and honour deserving are they who make as though naught the evil deeds of the lame-footed and unpleasing Hephaestus. I don't know what you're talking about, and I wish you wouldn't muddle us up with new names. Fire just happens. Nobody does it, not as a deed, you know, Cyril explained. What if they did, the phoenix wouldn't help them, because it's a crime to set fire to things. Arsenic or something they call it, because it's as bad as poisoning people. Arson, he means. Yeah, actually the two words do sound like they're related. The phoenix wouldn't help them. Father told me it wouldn't, because the phoenix is an insurance company. My priests do well, said the phoenix. Lead on. I don't know what to say, said Cyril, and the others said the same. Ask for the high priest, said the phoenix. Say that you have a secret to unfold that concerns my worship, and he will lead you to the inmost sanctuary. So the children went in, all four of them, though they didn't like it, and stood in a large and beautiful hall adorned with Doulton tiles, Royal Doulton was a manufacturer of ceramics, known for cups and saucers and dinner sets and things like this, but also, obviously, at some stage they made tiles. So that's Doulton tiles, in a large and beautiful bath with... Sorry? I'm going to read that sentence again because so far it's not making sense because I interrupted myself. So the children went in, all 4 of them, though they didn't like it, and stood in a large and beautiful hall adorned with Doulton tiles, like a large and beautiful bath with no water in it. That's what the lining of the tiles made it feel like. And stately pillars supporting the roof, an unpleasing representation of the phoenix in brown pottery disfigured one wall. There were counters and desks of mahogany and brass, and clerks bent over the desks and walked behind the counters. There was a great clock over an inner doorway. "Inquire for the high priest," whispered the phoenix. An attentive clerk in decent black, who controlled his mouth but not his eyebrows, now came towards them. He leaned forward on the counter, and the children thought he was going to say, "What can I have the pleasure of showing you?" like in a draper's. That's a fabric shop. Instead of which the young man said, "And what do you want?" "We want to see the high priest," said the children. "Get along with you," said the young man. An elder man, also decent in black coat, advanced. "Perhaps it's Mr. Blank. Not for worlds would I give the name." So the author says, sorry, itchy nose. The author is saying that they've used the name Blank instead of the actual name of the person, just for safety's sake. Okay, I'm just going to see if I need to have another picture ready for you before we get on to the next thing. Sorry. Multitasking is not my thing. I'm not very good at it. I get easily distracted. I'll carry on with this. "Perhaps it's Mr. Blank. Not for worlds would I give the name. He is a Masonic high priest, you know." He's the Masonic Lodge. A porter was sent away to look for Mr. Asterisk, I cannot give his name, and the children were left there to look on and be looked on by all the gentlemen at the mahogany desks. Anthea and Jane thought that they looked kind. The boys thought that they stared, and that it was like their cheek. In other words, they were being cheeky by staring at them. The porter returned with the news that Mr. Sorry, door just shut next to me. Hopefully it's going to stop doing that. The porter returned with the news that Mr. ... I dare not reveal his name, was out, but that Mr. Here a really delightful gentleman appeared. He had a beard and a kind and merry eye, and each one of the 4 knew at once that this was a man who had kiddies of his own and could understand what you were talking about. Yet it was a difficult thing to explain. "What is it?" he asked. "Mr. He named the name, which I will never reveal. "Is out. Can I do anything?" "In a sanctuary," murmured the phoenix. "I beg your pardon," said the nice gentleman, who thought it was Robert who had spoken. "We have something to tell you," said Cyril, "but..." He glanced at the porter, who was lingering much nearer than he need have done. "This is a very public place." The nice gentleman laughed. "Come upstairs, then," he said, and led the way up a wide and beautiful staircase. Anthea says the stairs were of white marble, but I am not sure. On the corner post of the stairs at the top was a beautiful image of the phoenix in dark metal, and on the wall at each side was a flat sort of image of it. The nice gentleman led them into a room where the chairs and even the tables were covered with reddish leather. He looked at the children inquiringly. "Don't be frightened," he said. "Tell me exactly what you want." "May I shut the door?" said Cyril. The gentleman looked surprised, but he shut the door. "Now," said Cyril firmly, "I know that you'll be awfully surprised and you'll think it's not true and we are lunatics, but we aren't, and it is. Robert's got something inside his Norfolk." That's Robert, he's my young brother. Norfolk being short term for his Norfolk jacket. He's my young brother. Now, don't be upset and have a fit or anything, sir. Of course, I know when you called your shop the Phœnix, you never thought there was one, but there is, and Robert's got it buttoned up against his chest. If it's an old curio in the form of a phoenix, I dare say the board, said the nice gentleman as Robert began to fumble with his buttons. He's thinking that they've got an image of a phoenix that the board may consider purchasing or something like that because of it being associated with their brand. It's old enough, said Anthea, going by what it says, but my goodness gracious, said the gentleman as the phoenix, with one last wriggle that melted into a flutter, got out of its nest in the breast of Robert's jacket and stood up on the leather-covered table. What an extraordinarily fine bird, he went on. I don't think I ever saw one just like it. I should think not, said the phoenix, with pardonable pride, and the gentleman jumped. Oh, it's been taught to speak. Some sort of parrot, perhaps. I am, said the bird simply, the head of your house, and I have come to my temple to receive your homage. I am no parrot, its beak curved scornfully. I am the one and only Phœnix, and I demand the homage of my high priest. In the absence of our manager, the gentleman began, exactly as though he were addressing a valued customer, in the absence of our manager, I might perhaps be able— What am I saying? He turned pale and passed his hand across his brow. My dears, he said, the weather is unusually warm for the time of year, and I don't feel quite myself. Do you know, for a moment I really thought that remarkable bird of yours had spoken and said it was the phoenix, and, what's more, that I'd believed it. So it did, sir, said Cyril, and so did you. It really— Allow me. A bell was rung. The porter appeared. Mackenzie, said the gentleman, you see that golden bird? Yes, sir. The other breathed a sigh of relief. It is real, then? Yes, sir, of course, sir. You take it in your hand, sir, said the porter sympathetically, and reached out his hand to the phoenix, who shrank back on toes curved with agitated indignation. He's doing this with his feet on the table. Forbear, it cried. How dare you seek to lay hands on me? The porter saluted. Beg pardon, sir, he said. I thought you was a bird. I am a bird. The bird. The phoenix. Sorry. Indigestion. Not good. That's better. I'm just going to see if I can see, before I show you, what the next set of pictures are. Might not be a bad idea, eh? Just waiting for it to come up on my computer. Working on it, it says, and it's the little blue spinny wheel. This is why I actually have a new computer in the wings. That's what I keep looking at over here, as I have my replacement computer sitting on the floor running with a secondary monitor, secondary to what I'm doing, sitting on top of it, which is showing me some other bits of information that help me to keep an eye on how the stream is working. I shall get back to the story in a minute. I'm just giving my stomach a chance to settle down. And then we shall carry on with what we're reading. All right. Now, I'm looking at these pictures. Where are we up to? We've done that, we've done that. I think we're nearly there at the next one. We'll find out. I should recognise the phrase used because thankfully the current illustrations that we have a caption at the bottom which helps me to know where I'm meant to put it, because the ebook I'm reading doesn't have the illustrations in it, sadly. Some of the ones I read previously do, which means I know when I'm meant to show you the pictures. Anyway, we'll carry on reading. Of course you are, sir, said the porter. I see that the first minute. Directly I got my breath, sir. I'll just go back and read the context. Beg pardon, sir, he said. I thought you was a bird. I am a bird. The bird. The phoenix. And then the porter says, of course you are, sir. I see that the first minute. Directly I got my breath, sir. That will do, said the gentleman. Ask Mr. Wilson and Mr. Sterry to step up here for a moment, please. Mr. Sterry and Mr. Wilson were in their turn overcome by amazement, quickly followed by conviction. To the surprise of the children, everyone in the office took the phoenix at its word, and after the first shock of surprise, it seemed to be perfectly natural to everyone that the phoenix should be alive, and that passing through London, it should call at its temple. We ought to have some sort of ceremony, said the nicest gentleman anxiously. There isn't time to summon the directors and shareholders. We might do that tomorrow, perhaps. Yes, the boardroom would be the best. I shouldn't like it to feel we haven't done everything in our power to show our appreciation of its condescension in looking in on us in this friendly way. The children could hardly believe their ears, for they had never thought that anyone but themselves would believe in the phoenix. And yet everyone did. All the men in the office were brought in by twos and threes, and the moment the phoenix opened its beak, it convinced the cleverest of them, as well as those who were not so clever. Cyril wondered how the story would look in the papers the next day. He seemed to see the posters in the streets. Phoenix Fire Office, the Phoenix at its temple, meeting to welcome it, delight of the manager and everybody, as headings on the posters. Headings in the newspaper, maybe. Excuse our leaving you a moment, said the nice gentleman, and he went away with the others, and through the half-closed door the children could hear the sound of many boots on stairs, the hum of excited voices explaining, suggesting, arguing, the thumpy drag of heavy furniture being moved about. The phoenix strutted up and down the leather-covered table, looking over its shoulder at its pretty back. I think it's slightly vain. You see what a convincing manner I have, it said proudly. And now a new gentleman came in and said, bowing low, everything is prepared. We have done our best at so short a notice. The meeting, the ceremony, will be in the boardroom. Will the Honourable Phoenix walk? It is only a few steps. Or would it like some sort of conveyance? My Robert will bear me to the boardroom, if that be the unlovely name of my temple's inmost court, replied the bird. So they all followed the gentleman. There was a big table in the boardroom, but it had been pushed right up under the long windows at one side, and the chairs were arranged in rows across the room, like those you have at schools when there is a magic lantern on our Eastern Empire, or on the way we do in the Navy. Magic lantern, slide projector. Before the days of school films, or whatever their modern equivalent is, they used to show us films, educational films. Before that, they used to do it with slides, and the early version of slides was a magic lantern. That was its common name. And those were the titles of the sort of things they would show you as an educational thing using the magic lantern slides. The doors were of carved wood, very beautiful, with a carved phoenix above. Anthea noticed that the chairs in the front rows were the kind that her mother so loved to ask the price of in old furniture shops, and never could buy because the price was nearly always £20 each. So these are antiques. On the mantelpiece were some heavy bronze candlesticks and a clock, and on the top of the clock was another image of the phoenix. Because after all, this is the Phœnix Insurance Company, so they have their logo everywhere. Remove that effigy, said the phoenix to the gentleman who was there, and it was hastily taken down. Then the phoenix fluttered to the middle of the mantelpiece and stood there, looking more golden than ever. We'll try this. Try another verse, said the phoenix. Is the caption. We haven't got to that bit, but now you can see the phoenix standing on something on the mantelpiece and the others there watching. I'm going to try and get somewhere where you can see it, and I'll carry on reading. Stood there looking more golden than ever. Then everyone in the house and the office came in, from the cashier to the women who cooked the clerks' dinners in the beautiful kitchen at the top of the house, and everyone bowed to the phoenix and then sat down in a chair. "Gentlemen," said the nicest gentleman, we have met here today. The phoenix was turning its golden beak from side to side. "I don't notice any incense," it said, with an injured sniff. A hurried consultation ended in plates being fetched from the kitchen. Brown sugar, sealing wax, and tobacco were placed on these, and something from a square bottle was poured over it all. Then a match was applied. It was the only incense that was handy in the Phœnix office, and it certainly burned very briskly and smoked a great deal. So somehow or other they realised they had to do something to replicate the idea of incense in a temple. "We have met here today," said the gentleman again, "on an occasion unparalleled in the annals of this office. Our respected Phœnix—" "Head of the house," said the Phœnix in a hollow voice. I was coming to that. "Our respected Phœnix, the head of this ancient house, has at length done us the honour to come among us. I think I may say, gentlemen, that we are not insensible to this honour, and that we welcome with no uncertain voice one whom we have so long desired to see in our midst." Several of the younger clerks thought of saying "hear, hear," but they feared it might seem disrespectful to the bird. "I will not take up your time," the speaker went on, "by recapitulating the advantages to be derived from a proper use of our system of fire insurance. I know, and you know, gentlemen, that our aim has ever been to be worthy of that eminent bird whose name we bear, and who now adorns our mantelpiece with his presence. 3 cheers, gentlemen, for the winged head of the house." The cheers rose, deafening. When they had died away, the phoenix was asked to say a few words. It expressed in graceful phrases the pleasure it felt in finding itself at last in its own temple. "And," it went on, "you must not think me wanting in appreciation of your very hearty and cordial reception when I ask that an ode may be recited or a choric song sung. It is what I have always been accustomed to." The 4 children, dumb witnesses of this wonderful scene, glanced a little nervously across the foam of white faces above the sea of black coats. It seemed to them that the Phoenix was really asking a little too much. "Time presses," said the Phoenix, "and the original ode of invocation is long, as well as being Greek, and besides it is no use invoking me when I am here. But is there not a song in your own tongue for such a great day as this?" Absently, the manager began to sing, absent-mindedly, and one by one the rest joined. "Absolute security, no liability, all kinds of property insured against fire, terms most favourable, expenses reasonable, moderate rates for annual insurance." Maybe it's an advertising ditty. "That one is not my favourite," interrupted the Phoenix, "and I think you've forgotten part of it." The manager hastily began another. "O golden Phoenix, fairest bird, the whole great world has often heard of all the splendid things we do. Great Phoenix, just to honour you." That's better, said the bird, and everyone sang, Class 1 for private dwelling house, for household goods and shops allows, provided these are built of brick or stone and tiled and slated thick. Try another verse, said the phoenix, further on, and again arose the voices of all the clerks and employees and managers and secretaries and cooks. In Scotland our insurance yields the price of burnt-up stacks in fields. Skip that verse, said the phoenix. Thatched dwellings and their whole contents we deal with also with their rents. O glorious phoenix, look and see that these are dealt with in class 3. I'm thinking this is a set of rhymes to remember the different types of insurance that they do, that they have all, having come up through the system at this place, learnt to help them remember what they meant to know. The glories of your temple throng, too thick to go in any song, and we attend, O good and wise, to days of grace and merchandise. When people's homes are burned away, they never have a cent to pay, if they have done as all should do, O Phoenix, and have honoured you. So let us raise our voice and sing the praises of the Phoenix King in classes 1 and 2 and 3. O trust to him, for kind is he. I'm sure you're very kind, said the Phoenix, and now we must be going. And thank you very much for a very pleasant time. May you all prosper as you deserve to do, for I am sure a nicer, pleasanter spoken lot of temple attendants I have never met and never wish to meet. I wish you all good day. It fluttered to the wrist of Robert and drew the 4 children from the room. The whole of the office staff followed them down the wide stairs and filed into their accustomed places, and the 2 most important officials stood on the steps, bowing till Robert had buttoned the golden bird in his Norfolk bosom. And it and he and the 3 other children were lost in the crowd on the street. The 2 most important gentlemen looked at each other earnestly and strangely for a moment, and then retreated to those sacred inner rooms where they toil without ceasing for the good of the house. And the moment they were all in their places, managers, secretaries, clerks, and porters, they all stared, and each looked cautiously round to see if anyone was looking at him, for each thought he had fallen asleep for a few minutes and had dreamed a very odd dream about the phoenix and the boardroom. And of course no one mentioned it to anyone else, because going to sleep at your office is a thing you simply must not do. The extraordinary confusion of the boardroom with the remains of the incense in the plates would have shown them at once that the visit of the phoenix had been no dream, but a radiant reality. But no one went into the boardroom again that day, and the next day, before the office was opened, it was all cleaned and put nice and tidy by a lady whose business asking questions was not part of. So it was a lady who did cleaning, and she didn't ask why she had to clean certain things. She just did her job. Safer. That is why Cyril read the papers in vain on the next day and the day after that, because no sensible person thinks his dreams worth putting in the paper, and no one will ever own that he has been asleep in the daytime. The phoenix was very pleased, but it decided to write an ode for itself. It thought the ones it had heard at its temple had been too hastily composed. Its own ode began, For beauty and for modest worth the phoenix has not its equal on earth. And when the children went to bed that night, it was still trying to cut down the last line to the proper length without taking out any of what it wanted to say. That's what makes poetry so difficult. There you go. And that's the end of the chapter and today's reading, because it's another 32 pages for the whole of the next chapter. Oh, goodness me. That Phoenix. So I'm pretty certain that Phoenix has a little bit of his own magic. He doesn't rely just on the magic of the carpet, does he? To have enchanted all of the people at that insurance office so that they would act as if he really was their whatever, the creature that they worship. That's why the temple is there. Anyway, what a laugh. Oh, goodness me. And that author, such an imagination. Now, I don't know about now, in this day and age with modernization, but I'm fairly certain that once upon a time, not necessarily where they describe in the book, but I'm fairly certain that the author has seen those emblems of the phoenix in London City. Maybe not all in one building, but definitely will have seen them in London City, in central London, and associated them with the Phœnix Insurance Company, which possibly gave her the idea. I'm not sure. I wonder. She used to live in London. She would have been in the city quite a bit at different times. So that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? What a scream. Oh, goodness. So just not what I was expecting this time. This is a story I haven't read before. Some of the stories, most of the stories that I've read so far have been ones that I've read. Sorry, I'm just checking this again. Most of the stories that I have read so far with my readings have been stories that I've actually read previously. A lot of them were read when I was growing up. That's why they're very familiar. That's partly why I felt that they were really good to read, because they're part of my background, but a lot of people who are younger than me have just never come across them, except for maybe, as I said before, as a TV series or a movie even if it's just on children's television type movie. A lot of ones like The Secret Garden and A Little Princess, that is how most people know them. But yeah, like I say, I grew up reading these. There's one other story that I read a while ago now, a couple of months ago, that I have not read before myself, but I have read other stories by the same author and thoroughly enjoyed them and loved them. And the author is Elizabeth Goudge, Goudge, slightly unusual spelling. And the one that most people know is The Little White Horse, which was redone as a movie called The Secret of Moonacre. It tells the story based on what the book is like. There have been some TV series and TV movies of The Little White Horse, which have been a lot more accurate to the book. It's a great introduction, but if you really want the feel of the story, then read the actual book, The Little White Horse by Elizabeth Goudge. Now, the book that I read here is not that one. It's one called Linnets and Valerians. And I discovered somebody who it was a favourite book of theirs. They had thoroughly enjoyed it when they were younger, and they were enjoying being able to share it with their own child, because they had enjoyed it so much and hadn't been able to get a copy of the book itself, and had come across my reading the story and delighted in being able to share it with their child, who had also really enjoyed it, and it's now become one of their favourites. And I'm sure they will keep looking for an original copy, a copy of the book itself, so that they can actually read it whenever they want to, not just have to listen to somebody else reading it and rambling in between sections. But that's the sort of thing, that's part of the idea with reading these stories, is so that people who have memories of things that they want to enjoy again, or people who like a certain sort of thing and it's not so common anymore, or if you like where I live, our library will keep a certain range of old books that are classics. there are I would say fairly safely that there are certain ones of Charles Dickens's books that are on the shelves at the library. When it comes to children's books, not so much. And it has to be really well known if they're going to keep it. They tend to try and keep their stock reasonably fresh. So if it's over a certain age or looking too tatty, then they will get rid of the book. They'll often sell it on the trolley at the front door, and then use that space in the library to put in a new book, which is great that they are updating. That's good. But it's also really nice to not lose some of the older books, which is why it's fun looking through secondhand bookshops when you find that they have old books of the sort of thing that you like. I will at some stage, and no promises as to when, I will actually be, I have a green screen behind me, which is why you're seeing a picture of bookshelves here. This is actually a photograph of Rudyard Kipling's study, or whatever he called it, I can't remember, I think it was a study, his writing room at the house that he lived in Sussex called Bateman's. And it's where he wrote Puck of Pook's Hill, Rewards and Fairies, and a whole lot of other stories that he's famous for writing. Puck of Pook's Hill and Rewards and Fairies are particularly relevant to where the house is, because the landscape around that house is where the stories, those two books, are set as if it was part of the history of that area. Some of the stories are very much imaginary, and other ones are taking historic information and fitting them into an imaginary story so that the children of the story can actually understand a little bit of the background of where they come from. Not them personally, but the countryside that they live in, the country that they live in. So that you get things like that. So that's why I've got this picture behind me, is because the previous book I was reading was one of his ones. And I've been to this house, very intriguing, been through the gardens, actually walked down past the house, past the gardens, down to the river, the mill stream, which is where there's a mill house, which is specifically mentioned in the very first chapter of the first of those two books. So the very first time I read the book, I'm like, oh, I know where this is. I've been there. And sometimes it's really neat to get the sense of connection, even if it's not you yourself who's been there, but there's somebody who's a real live person who you are listening to or have listened to, who has been to some of these places and has talked about them or has made reference to them. It just adds so much more to the sense of connection of us to people who've gone before us, to history, to literature and things like this. One of the things that I've really enjoyed with growing up in the family that I grew up in, was that a great uncle and great aunt of mine lived in China for 7 years, which is a fair while, before it became a communist country. And that's why they left, was because the communists were starting to take over and they were anti-foreigners and all this sort of stuff. And so they had left. They had done work over there as, he was a soil scientist, a chemist. And so he had been over there helping them with agricultural stuff to be able to feed their millions and millions of people, helping them to make a little bit more of what they had that they could produce. And so my aunt, who was a real storyteller style of person, would often invite me up there. I'd go, they lived up the hill from us, go and stay overnight or stay a couple of nights there and enjoy books on their bookshelf and eating foods that they did because they ate differently to us. She had lived in Italy for a time. She had learnt to drive a car in Rome. I don't know if you've ever heard what that's like, but apparently it's quite hair-raising driving in Rome, even back then when she was doing it. And because of that, she didn't really do a lot of other driving later on. That could be quite traumatic. Anyway, so she used to cook Italian food. And it was quite normal for her as one of the things she used to cook. My first experience of anything like that, it was such an eye-opener. But also, I would go up there and stay with her, and we would work one day beforehand on preparing the food for a Chinese banquet. And these were foods that she had eaten, she and my uncle had eaten when they were living in China. and she would explain the traditions of a Chinese banquet. If it's not just a normal household meal, but it's actually a banquet, you don't count your rice, and you don't count if you're having noodles as a base dish. You don't count those, but you have as many different dishes of food as you have guests going to attend. So if it's a small group, it's only going to have a small number of dishes. If it's a large group of people, it's going to have a much broader variety of different foods that are available. Not the number of containers of food, but different presentations of food. Did you know that? When you're a guest, you go and sit in the most lowly seat you can find that's empty when you come into the dining space. And you wait for the host to invite you to sit in a higher seat. Not height above the ground, but height in terms of rank among the people who are there. You don't go and sit as near to the front of the space as possible, because if someone comes who is much more important than you, it's a little bit shaming to be sent down to one of the lower seats, because the important person is meant to be sitting up near the front, at the front, next to the host. You wait to be invited up, and it's an incredible honour. Did you know that? Depending on which region you are in, when you have been given food to eat at a meal, you either eat absolutely everything in the dish, or you leave some behind, and it depends on which region you're in. Absolutely everything, it's because it was so delicious I couldn't help but eat it all, which means that sometimes you just get way too full. She said yes, that happened. In one of the other regions where you leave something, it's like, even if you're eating with very poor people and it's not a lot of food, because they'll provide more than they really should, but even then there's still restricted amounts available. You still leave something, even if it's just a few grains of rice, as a way of saying, you have fed me so well that I cannot eat everything that you have given me. Did you know that? Now, all of these things are stuff that I've learnt from stories from family members, that sort of thing. But there are also aspects of that sort of thing that I learned when I was growing up because of the books I was reading. And the books I was reading were books that my family members had read and enjoyed because of the life experiences they'd had. So each of these things adds to my inner world, but also they pass on to other people as well. I would love to be able to write books and write stories, so maybe one day I will. I've started writing some books, and I have noticed that some of my own experiences have started to creep in, but in such a way that it's entirely appropriate for the stories I'm writing. But it's a very long way off. One day we'll get there. Anyway, enough of all the talk. If you want some more stories and you're watching me live on Twitch, then if you want to keep listening, because I'm going to be going in a minute, then go to my YouTube channel, which I am writing in the chat box, and there's a link there for you. So you can go over there, find the playlists, or even find individual videos over there to start with. And I've put the books into playlists. There you go. If you're on YouTube, go and have a look at my playlist tab and see which other stories you want to listen to. And don't forget that each of these will get posted over there 2 weeks after I have read them live on Twitch. And if you're on YouTube, you're most welcome to join us when I'm reading live. It's a lot more fun, and there's a little bit more interaction happens, and that sort of stuff. The only editing I tend to do is if there's been something inappropriate happens and I don't really think it's appropriate to put up on YouTube, I'll cut that little bit out, which I have had to do before. And also I will actually trim this video, so you've just got this piece here that I'm in. You'll see the pictures, but you won't get the whole overlay, which says story time, and it's got a picture of the book cover and all that sort of stuff, just because you don't need all that. So there you go. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you want to be notified when I put a new video up, ring the bell icon, click on the button that's got a picture of a bell on it. You know what to do. And also hit the like button. because it'll help YouTube to recognize that, yes, you have actually enjoyed that. Here's another one. It will show you next time you go onto YouTube if there's another one. And if you're on Twitch and you haven't yet, you're most welcome to follow me, and then Twitch will also tell you when I go live. Anyway, so thank you very much for being here. Go and find yourself something else to read. There you go. That's a different thing to do, but it's a good one. And let me know next time what you've been reading. If you've got suggestions of books you'd like to read, either put it in the chat, put it in the comments below the YouTube video if it's appropriate. Join our Discord server, which there are links for in my profiles. Join our Discord server and tell us what you're interested in reading, or what you thought was hilarious, or what you thought was horrific, or the weird mistakes I made, or anything. I don't mind. Just get into conversation, Keep your brain going. Interact with other people, that sort of stuff. And thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.